And a very warm welcome to all of you. We'll request you all to please kindly take your seats as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very good morning. Namaskar. I'll request you all to please kindly take your seats as quickly as possible. On behalf of Access, it is my privilege to welcome you all to the 14th Livelihoods India Summit. May I once again request members of the audience who are still standing to please kindly take your seats. On behalf of Access, it is my privilege to welcome you all to the 14th Livelihoods India Summit. May I also take this opportunity to request you all to please do remember to either switch off your cell phones or put them on silent mode. Ladies and gentlemen, may I once again request you all to please kindly take your seats. We are ready to start with the inaugural session. Meanwhile, members of the audience who are still standing at the back, may I request you all to please kindly take your seats. So once again, good morning, namaskar, and welcome to the 14th Livelihoods India Summit. On behalf of Access, we extend a warm and hearty welcome to you all. It is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce the inaugural panel for today, which comprises of very eminent guests and speakers. To start with, I invite on stage Ms. Radhika Agashe, Executive Director, Access Development Services. Let's welcome her. We warmly welcome on stage Dr. Sanjeev Phansalkar, Director, Vikas Anvesh Foundation. A very warm welcome to him. We extend a warm welcome on stage to Mr. N. Srinivasan, Expert Development Finance and Rural Livelihoods. A warm and hearty welcome to Mr. A.K. Sood, Deputy Managing Director, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. May I request him to please join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our privilege to welcome in our midst this morning Mr. Shombi Sharp, UN Resident Coordinator in India. May I invite him to please take his place on stage. A very warm and hearty welcome to all the esteemed guests who have now taken their place on stage. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, may I request you all to please rise and stand in attention for the national anthem. We shall begin the program with the national anthem. I request the AV team to please play the national anthem.
Jana Mana Adhinayak Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkal Vanga हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. After paying homage to Mother Nation and Mother Earth, it's time to welcome the honored guests on the dais with flowers this morning. We warmly welcome in our midst Mr. A.K. Sood, Deputy Managing Director, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. We welcome you with flowers, sir. A very warm welcome to Mr. Shombi Sharp, UN Resident Coordinator in India. A warm and hearty welcome to Mr. N. Srinivasan, Expert Development, Finance and Rural Livelihoods. A very, very warm and hearty welcome to Dr. Sanjeev Phansalkar, Director, Vikas Anvesh Foundation. And a warm and hearty welcome to Ms. Radhika Agashe, Executive Director. Now that we have extended a floral welcome to all the honored dignitaries on the dais, it's time to request and invite Ms. Radhika Agashe to deliver the welcome address. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Very good morning, respected guests on the dais, Mr. Shombi Sharp, United Nations Resident Coordinator India, Dr. A.K. Sood, DMD NABARD, Dr. Sanjeev Phansalkar, and Mr. N. Srinivasan. On behalf of Access, it's my great honor to welcome all the eminent dignitaries of the inaugural panel. I'm also privileged to extend a very warm welcome to all the speakers, special guests, and delegates. Thank you all for braving the Delhi colds and joining us for the 14th Livelihoods India Summit. 14 years ago, the Livelihoods India Summit started small when we first organized it in 2009 as an additional day to the Inclusive Finance India Summit. And then we got the confidence of having it off as a full-fledged two-day event that quickly evolved into a national annual convening aimed at building an ecosystem around promoting and supporting livelihoods, showcasing best practices, sharing knowledge and experiences, and seeking to find solutions to address key challenges and issues. As per a recent discussion paper released by the NITI Aayog and the UNDP, multidimensional poverty in India was found to decline from 29% in 2013-14 to 11.28% in 2022-23, with about 248.2 million people reportedly moving out of poverty during this period. The labor force participation rate has improved, confirming the emergence of the economy out of the post-pandemic induced slowdown. While things are certainly looking up, the challenge of providing sustainable, dignified, and resilient livelihood opportunities to various segments of people across the length and breadth of a country like India continues to remain immense. The issue of livelihoods is more complex now than ever. The demography and aspirations of people seeking work has evolved, with underemployment among literate people rising in the last couple of decades. While rural livelihoods are still dependent on agriculture and allied sectors, and incomes of smallholder farmers are still meager and sensitive to various externalities, growing urbanization and unique challenges of ensuring decent work for people living in urban areas need specialized strategies which still need to be fully cracked. With the much needed growing focus on Nari Shakti and the women-led development emphasis is great. While that is great, it requires an ecosystem approach to enable women to leverage economic opportunities including things like care support, psychosocial support, safety, and networks, to name a few, in addition to, of course, the livelihood interventions per se. The opportunities and also possible threats that are presented by the evolution and expansion of digital technologies and artificial intelligence also need to be considered. And finally, climate change being an imminent reality, livelihoods need to be promoted in sustainable, ecologically positive frameworks. These and many more topical issues and themes will be discussed as part of carefully curated sessions across the 2 days of the summit. As per tradition, the State of India's Livelihoods Report, the Soil Report, will be released as part of the inaugural just now, and Dr. Sanjeev Fansalkar, the editor of the report, will present the summary. In addition, with the self-help group movement, possibly the largest single program for women's economic empowerment in the world, completing 30 years, Access is excited to bring out a publication, Springboard for Powering Women, 3 Decades of SHG Movement, at the summit inaugural. This book, authored by Girija Srinivasan and N. Srinivasan, is a celebration of women's strength, courage, and success, showcasing the resilience and tenacity shown by women who, through SHGs, have not only found financial independence, but have also become architects of change in their communities. The presentation of the FPO Impact Awards, which is now in its 6th year, will be part of the valedictory session, being graced by Her Royal Highness, the Infanta Donna Cristina of Spain, and Shri Faiz Ahmed Kidwai, Additional Secretary, Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India. Access has set up an investment fund on behalf of IFAD, the Grants for Agroecology Program Fund, GAP Fund, for supporting enterprises operating in agroecology value chains with grant funding and technical assistance to help them scale up and leverage other funding opportunities. The first set of grants under this fund will be announced and presented at the valedictory tomorrow. Access and a few of our partners are organizing side events, workshops, and roundtables that offer an opportunity of more engaged, closed group conversations, 2 events on advancing women's entrepreneurship, and 1 on adopting digital agri-solutions for smallholder farmers will be organized across the 2 days. We are overwhelmed with the support from a wide range of stakeholders, technical partners, track partners, and sector leaders who contribute to the discussions across the different panels across the 2 days, and a large number of delegates who attend the conference every year. We appreciate the support of all our sponsors and partners who continue to invest financial resources and intellectual resources in the summit. Each year, we are fortunate to attract some new partners who come on board, and we hope that they find value in associating with the summit. I hope that the knowledge shared through the summit sessions will contribute to research, practice, and further dialogue on livelihood initiatives for the vulnerable, and we anticipate that the summit will provide an accessible and common platform for policymakers and practitioners. Once again, a hearty welcome to everyone, and we look forward to 2 days of exciting and enriching deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Agashe, for your welcome address and the brief introduction to this year's summit. I now take the pleasure of inviting Mr. Shombi Sharp to deliver his special address. Please welcome with an applause.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues from Access, Mr. Sharma, Ms. Agashe, other dignitaries on the dais, to all of you who have joined us here today in the room. Let me say namaste. I hope it's not too late to also say Aapko Naya Saal ki Shubhkamnaएं. Happy New Year. Maybe I'm pushing it a little bit with that, but some of familiar faces I haven't seen yet in this new year. But it's a great privilege to be here on behalf of the United Nations country team in India as representative of the UN Secretary General as well here in India. It's really exciting to be here as part of the Livelihoods India Summit. And I'd like to thank Access Development Services and the co-hosts, Niti Aayog, for bringing everybody together around these important issues and topics. I'm also very pleased that the United Nations agencies are a part of this. For example, UN Women, I know, is co-organizing sessions on the care economy. And then more broadly, I know that UN agencies have engaged with Access in these important objectives, as was mentioned, IFAD, and also UNDP and others. Also to congratulate, maybe just jumping the gun here by a few minutes, but to congratulate on the launch of the State of India's Livelihoods report as well, an important reference document, and looking very much forward to hearing more in detail on that shortly. I think, dear friends, you know, again, just a couple of weeks ago, we closed our eyes on 2023 and reopened them, probably with a bit of magical thinking, hoping to see maybe a new world, a new reality, not beset by crises everywhere we look, or a world not desperately behind on the Sustainable Development Goals at the halfway mark. And unfortunately, of course, 2024 came and nothing much changed, or if anything, we found even more bad news in the new year. For example, that 2023 was now confirmed the hottest on record. In fact, by some estimates, perhaps the warmest in 100,000 years, meaning we continue to move rapidly from global warming to global boiling. And the 1.5 degrees limit aspiration set by countries of the world in Paris in 2015 was nearly breached already last year, and at least temporarily, and may likely be done so this year, again, at least temporarily. We are only on track still for 15% of the global SDG targets. Fully a third, as we've heard, are either progressing very much too slowly or even regressing, in fact. And at present, gender equality is hundreds of years away. By some accounts, 100-something, by some accounts, 300-something. In any case, many, many more years than any of us have to afford. So let me begin by thanking as well the organizers for launching this conversation with the plenary session, Demystifying Women-Led Development and Promoting Women-Led Development, which was such a great keynote theme of India's G20 presidency that is now has been passed on to Brazil within the G20 framework. And the reason that this is so important is that this cuts to the core of some hope and some optimism, because we know what to do. We know how to get out of the current bind that we are in globally. And these truths, this North Star, include, I would argue, first and foremost, advancing and promoting gender equality, embracing Nari Shakti, as was mentioned, understanding that women's livelihoods and empowerment and equality is quite literally the single greatest multiplier that we have in our toolkit to achieve the aspirations, not just of women and girls, but of men and boys, of all of humanity, of communities, of households, of companies, of nations. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres repeatedly says, gender equality is the unfinished business of our time. And the point is that gender equality, and I think this links to the idea of demystifying, it's quite straightforward. Of course it is about core human rights obligations, of course. But it's also about simple, smart economics. There should be no mystery, there should be no controversy, there should be no discussion actually needed to understand the common sense that a fair playing field that puts all of us, all of humanity on equal footing is the only way to achieve our collective capabilities so that our communities and our households and our nations can achieve their full capability. And in this sense, gender equality is not a women's issue in a limited mindset. It is an issue for all of us in which men and boys must engage together with women and girls under the leadership of brave and courageous women and girls for this critical push for gender equality. And the results can be amazing, astounding. It's estimated that here in India alone, the path towards gender equality can unleash $770 billion. Globally, that number aggregates to $12 trillion. Who doesn't want $12 trillion of value additional within our global community? Yet women still today only make up some 1/3, a minority of business owners globally. Here in India, if I'm not mistaken, that number is even lower. Globally, girls aged 5 to 14 spend 160 million more hours every day on unpaid care and domestic work, unrecognized contributions, than boys of the same age. And according to the World Bank, more than 1 in 4 aged 15 and older women, young women, suffer violence at the hands of their partners. The home is not a place of safety. So, dear friends, here in India, we see the greatest youth generation in history. We see the greatest women and girls generation in history. No country has ever had more talent, more minds to tap with unique experiences and skills and perspectives ever before. So we understand that if young women, if girls are provided the right resources, skills, and opportunities, this gender dividend, combined with an incredible demographic dividend, could lead to the most significant group of female leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators the world has ever seen. And we already see that happening. And we see country by country across the world that when women have more leadership roles in public administrations, governments are more responsive, more accountable, corruption declines, the quality of public services increases. More women in parliaments is directly associated statistically with stronger climate commitments and higher levels of investments in healthcare and education. And so the good news is that these solutions are eminently in hand and achievable and link very much to the discussions here today. And that we stand now at the confluence of two powerful rivers of optimism. That is India, and that is women-led development. Again, as I mentioned, during India's G20 presidency, India promoted women-led development across all pillars throughout the G20 work, promoting girls' and women's leadership as a core focus. The New Delhi Leaders' Declaration delivered the strongest ever gender equality language that the G20 has ever seen. And women-led development is now embraced across all sectors of the G20. The government of India, of course, has launched a number of truly important critical programs promoting women's leadership. And the gender quota law in Parliament that we saw will be an important step towards achieving those benefits that I spoke about in terms of women in leadership and in Parliament. If we look at STEM, we know that globally, just 1/3 of students in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics are women. Yet here in India, we have achieved a fantastic parity in STEM education. We need to translate that into parity in terms of jobs in STEM fields. But this is a really, really important success to embrace. India's achievements in promoting women-led development and gender equality are very clearly seen in terms of financial inclusion and on the backs of an incredible world-class digital public infrastructure and women's access to financing. So we see so many encouraging signs of investment in women-led development here in India. And we are seeing one of the larger challenges, the labor force participation of women, we're seeing important improvement there as well. A 4.2% increase in the last year. Much, much more to be done, but this is important momentum to build on. So just to conclude, I want to say that these issues, gender equality, women-led development, very practical, demystified tools to achieve success for all of our dreams, are at the core of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, our partnership offer co-created with the government of India for the 5 years, 23 to 27. And our UN agencies, UN Women, and others are taking this forward through partnership with all of you here today. And I'm very, very proud about that, with civil society, with academics, with government, with businesses, so vitally important. I'm also very proud that we support the Women Entrepreneurship Platform put forward by Niti Aayog, a truly important aggregator of skills and opportunities, bringing business together and putting women's business leadership at the forefront. So with these words and thoughts, let me again thank the organizers, Access Development Solutions and Niti Aayog, for this opportunity. And let me reiterate the commitment of the United Nations in India to work with you together so that we can make gender equality and therefore the SDGs a reality for our collective prosperity. As I like to say, SDGs dunya mein mumkin hongi, kyunki India mein mumkin hongi. Thank you very much. Bahut bahut dhanyawad.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp, for the smattering Hindi that you speak. And of course, we are very, very indebted to you for your unstinted support. We really appreciate your presence here today, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to the release of the State of India's Livelihood Report 2023 edition. The State of India's Livelihoods Report is an annual publication which addresses the contemporary issues emerging in the livelihood sector. It is the only document that aggregates the experiences and challenges of the sector, analyzes case studies, and reports on the progress of both the government and the privately run programs. Given the diversity of themes that are covered in the State of India's Livelihoods Report, this year's report has been put together by a group of authors who are all subject matter experts. The report, of course, has been edited by Dr. Sanjeev Phansalkar, whom we are very proud to have with us seated on the stage. I now request Mr. Dheeraj Mutreja from Rabobank Foundation to join us on the stage for the report release. May I also request Ms. Sachi Bhalla from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to please join us. And may I also invite Mr. Vipin Sharma, CEO Access, to please join us on the stage for the report release. May I request for the report to be please brought forth on the stage. I'll request our esteemed guests to release this year's State of India's Livelihoods Report. Thank you all for joining us on stage to be a part of the report release. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now to request Dr. Sanjeev Phansalkar to share key highlights from the State of India's Livelihoods Report 2023 on behalf of Access and the authors. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Good morning, dignitaries on the dais and all my friends here. I'm indeed proud to be presenting and talking about this report, and I express my thanks to Access to have invited me for editing this. the comments of Mr. Sharp really, how shall I say, give a wonderful background to the contents of this report. He's talked about the importance of climate resilient livelihoods. He has talked about women-led enterprise and women-led livelihoods and women-led development. He has also talked about digital public infrastructure. Virtually everything that's contained in this report he has already mentioned. So I would rather not just belabor or keep repeating the same points. As you know, roughly half of the people in working population in India are not employed. And those who are employed may be underemployed or not satisfactorily employed. So the kind of texture of the problem of livelihoods in India is a very huge, massive. The numbers are large, 950 million total in the working population, half of them not employed. And that's what he was talking about, improvement of labor participation rates and inclusion of women in that and so on, and recognizing that they are there. That's what, those who are working at domestic levels and looking after families and stuff like that, but they're not recognized. This situation is further complicated. The texture of the problem which he was talking about is very different. 40 years back, 45 years back, when I started talking about, or rather working about issues on livelihoods, it was very different atmosphere. You talked about people not having 2 meals and therefore feeding them was the only major livelihood issue at that time. I'm talking of 1979, 80s and those times. No? Compared to that, the texture is very different. Now you have problems such as climate resilience, which was not even dreamt of in 1980s, if I may say. That time, at the most, we would talk about environmental sustainability, but nothing about climate change was talked about. The issues of gender equity probably had not surfaced to that extent. Social equity, yes. Gender equity, no, at that time. And of course, this new thing of digital, etc., had just not, been thought about at that time. So the texture is very different. The situation, as I said, is very complicated in India because we have truncated agrarian transition, which means that people who are become surplus in agriculture because of mechanization, etc., are not absorbed in the secondary sector, but have to find their jobs through migration in the service sector and things like that. So that's a major challenge. And combined with imbalanced industrial development, this leads to circular migration of a mammoth order, which was sort of under the carpet till about 4 years back. But with the lockdowns and the massive numbers of people returning back, nobody can talk about ignoring the fact of migration in this country anymore. So circular migration is a huge challenge. Ultra-poor and spatial situations such as the flood-prone agriculture or flood-prone regions in this country are some of the more complicating things. And many of these issues have been discussed in these papers in this collection, which was just released. I would skip this. This is not an economics class. Again, imbalanced urban industrial growth is a very commonly understood story. Most of the industrial growth is occurring either in the north or west or in the south. And a huge population and very dense population lives in the east of this country, which needs to migrate in order to just search livelihoods and jobs. Ultra poor, which includes landless, women-headed households, the elderly, the persons with disability, etc. Ranu Bhogal has done a good job, very good job of summarizing the way of, and that paper is included here, summarizing a way of addressing the livelihood challenge of the ultra poor. Unfortunately, at the moment, the results of those approaches are not yet demonstrated. We need some time to see that they go through and so on. So that's a big problem that we need to look. Flood-prone areas is something that has been troubling me. We did some work. I've been working and thinking and talking about it for maybe about 4 or 5 years now. And perhaps the youngest among this young boy named Kinshuk Ghosh helped us collect some data, and we have written a paper based on that on livelihood problems of the flood-prone areas here. And here the issue is that you have a very small crop calendar because of a flood on one side and temperature drop on the other and the cyclones in the third. That's the situation in North Bengal or Bihar and places like that. So very small crop calendar, continuous land erosion, continuous flooding, and a huge population to feed. So very complex problems, and no solution is very easily accessible or even visible on the ground. Climate-induced changes, again, well handled in this paper. And we, of course, had the what shall I say, good fortune of Professor Shambhu Prasad talking about FPOs and the way they are contributing to the livelihoods of the people and what needs to be done about them. I'm not mentioning them, but these are some of the papers that are in this volume. Now, I would skip and come straight to the key elements of the emerging agenda. I think Mr. Sharp mentioned this, but I think this is one point where I think attention of all workers and those who want to contribute to livelihoods need to be focused on, and that's about building livelihoods using what Mr. Nilekani talks about, the digital public infrastructure of the Open Network for Digital Commerce, Sahamati, which is the credit and financing platform, the UPI and other gateways, and this. The reason I mention this is all of us in the civil society sector who have been working on livelihoods know that ultimately the bottleneck is the rural producers accessing markets. That's where the problem invariably is. And we have just a little bit progress beyond painting the trader come middleman as the villain. We have not yet grappled with the situation about how to tackle that. And this digital public infrastructure perhaps offers one of the biggest opportunities for short-circuiting the conventional trade channel as it is and enabling the rural producers to directly access the paying urban consumers. And I'm no longer talking in the air. I myself have transacted with some small FPO somewhere in remote Bihar, buying some stuff like millets or something using the ONDC platform. My store is the thing on which they are registered. So this is, and I only hope that maybe 5 years down the line, 3 years down the line, we'll see huge amount of commerce happening between rural producers and urban consumers using the DPI. That's my great hope, and I hope that much attention will be paid to this. This needs to be supported, as I said, by distributed manufacturing for reducing migration and finding jobs closer to where people are. So distributed manufacturing coupled with DPI should probably work a great deal towards both building, enriching livelihoods and reducing migration load. This is my, I guess at the moment only a hope, but I think it's a fairly realistic hope. The FPO movement, which is very good, and a lot of efforts are being going on in that, needs to be supplemented by promoting agri-entrepreneurs, which also is being done with the help of Syngenta Foundation, and many other agencies are joined, because ultimately entrepreneurship at the village level will create the social and the financial capital eventually. I have been engaged with this, what SFPF stands for Small Farmers, Prosperous Farmers research, which IMI Tata program in Anand started. Tushar Shah gave a wonderful framework in which he talks about the entrepreneurial quotients of those farmers who show remarkable, significantly higher income compared to the rest of the farmers in the village in the same settings. And how do you build on that? So this research, we are currently engaged in this. We'll be drawing lessons from this, and we hope that these lessons can be taken to sort of practical steps of scaling up, etc., in due course of time. The last point is something that is very, very important for me. I bring it up. Last year also I talked about it, but I bring it up again because in the meanwhile we had evaluated one such effort which I'm talking about here, a charismatic person named Amir Khan. I'm sure you have heard all of you have heard about him. He kind of convened or became the anchor of a big effort of coalescing, converging multiple CSR efforts for promoting livelihoods and a sustainable environment in Maharashtra through his Pani Foundation. We happen to evaluate that program. We know it brings him. Ajit also is here. Ajit also was involved in evaluation of this in the couple of years back. And we find that this leads to a huge impact on the ground. So what is involved here? You need to bring multiple CSRs together. You need to also deploy their managerial pool. We don't need to look at and should not be looking at corporate social responsibility as merely signing a check and giving to somebody to do some work. But the corporates also have significant managerial talent which needs to be brought to bear on some of these very knotty problems. And with their as well as others' funds, can they evolve solutions? And the reason I brought Pani Foundation and Amir Khan in this is that probably this will happen if there is a charismatic person who will convene this. Corporates by themselves may be possibly caught up in traditional rivalries of business, etc., etc. But when somebody outside them brings them together, maybe wonderful work happens. In this particular Pani Foundation program, you had the Tatas, you had the Reliance, you had HDFC, you had Axis Bank, you had so many other players, all contributing their might, money, as well as talent for building this Pani Foundation program. So I think these kinds of programs where corporates contribute through their CSR, both money and managerial talent, for addressing some of the most critical livelihood problems. That, I think, would be an important thing. And some of the other lines I have indicated above. I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Access, for inviting me for this.
Thank you, Dr. Fansalkar, for helping putting us this report together and for the presentation, bringing together the key points from across the chapters. And of course, a big thank you to all the authors for their contribution in putting together this well-researched report. It's time now for our next release, which is Springboard for Powering Women, 3 Decades of SHG Movement. This is more than just the history of 3 decades of SHG movement in India. It's a celebration of women's strength, courage, and success. May I now request once again Ms. Sachi Bhalla from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Raman Vadva, Deputy Director, Rural Livelihoods, NRLM, and Mr. Vipin Sharma, CEO, Access, to please join us on stage for the release.
And may I request Ms. Girija Srinivasan, author of the report, she's authored it along with Mr. N. Srinivasan, to also please join us on stage.
I now request our guests and distinguished guests on the stage to please release the book, Springboard for Powering Women, 3 Decades of SHG Movement. Our thanks to the esteemed guests who joined us on stage for the release. May I request you all to please join us back in the audience. May I now request the author, Mr. N. Srinivasan, to please share the key highlights from the book on behalf of Access and the authors.
Good morning. Let me at the outset remember what Mr. Sharp said during his speech, that gender equality is not a women's issue. Maybe that partly summarizes what this book is about and what this movement is about. Let me only say what this book is not about. It is not about what Girija and I as authors wrote. It is not about what the voluntary sector so diligently started and worked upon from about 35, 38 years back. It's not about what banking system and NABARD did all these years. It's not about what the government had supported so much and so intensely got involved. It is about what these millions of women who took a few ideas and a few skills that were available and made it work for all of them. This book is describing those actions and the results that they achieved and the directions in which these women across the country are wanting to go. So let us understand that without them, none of these institutions we talk about or the book would not exist. So with this, I just try and say a few things around the book, not exactly what is in. What does this movement mean to women? One of the things during our field visit that we heard was, this is the movement is our family deity. The group is our family deity. That is where it starts for these women. It gave them the kind of literacy that they did not have. You won't believe that people who could not read, they were able to sign complex statements and run fairly large federations over a period of time with adequate exposure and, of course, with support. And the life skills that they got, they became very worldly wise. They knew how to interact with the external world. There was a lady in Muzaffarpur in Bihar who I met during our visit. She said, somebody who wanted to visit me in my village, he said, can you give me your husband's phone number and then his name so that I can find out your place and come and meet you? She said, no, you take my number. People in the village know me more than my husband. This is what has happened over a period of 5 years of involvement in the SHG movement. I mean, it talks about the ability and the confidence to deal with others that rose from this movement. Yeah, it also means big-time access to finance. You talk about people not being able to get as small as, say, 2,000 rupees as a loan, as a group member in the beginning of the movement. Today, we talk about an average loan of around 36,000 rupees. And the livelihoods that this movement cost, it really opened the doors for several of them. We hear stories of people who couldn't get, say, 1,000 rupees a month as a viable income. Today, getting about 30,000 rupees in, as I said earlier again in Muzaffarpur, I heard people who are earning about 100,000 rupees a month as income, running successful shops, dairies and the like. On the other side, the women feel greatly, respected. The movement gave them a lot more dignity. It gave them security and also a social status, which in brief I said earlier as well. It gave adequate space for women to operate within their family, in the society. They were being heard much more than in the past. And today, you find that women are active in several other spheres, just not the social sphere, but also in the political sphere. They dealt with significant problems in the early stages, like closing down alcohol shops in the villages, trying to deal with issues like child marriage. In fact, I think one of the conversations I had during the writing of this book was a lady who said, my daughter, she is now doing a course in nursing. She doesn't want to get married unless she can stand on her own. It's in a village in Bihar. Now, this is a conversation, it will be very difficult to see about, say, as recently as 5 years back. Meaning, the social problems, the political space that they have gained as a result of this. So, when we talk about what this movement meant to women, it is that it gave them self-esteem, a lot more belief in what they can do, and they became, meaning they can be agents of change. They can transform society and their own personal lives to the extent they desire. I think this is what the movement meant to the women. And of course, without some numbers, when you take a history of around 35 plus years, it's not possible. So when you look at the numbers, what is very significant? We are covering almost, say, 50% of adult women, meaning the percentage of adult women covered in the country as members of the SHG is about 45%. Which is a very large number, given that we are a very large country. Of course, it is not evenly spread across all states, but all mainstream states have a very significant presence of self-help groups, and a large number are credit linked. And one of the things that we have to realize, that this scale became possible. In the early stages, NABARD supported maybe for the first 15, 16 years heavily, but the scaling really took place when government thought it fit to enter the program and through NRLM tried to scale up the number of groups through various support mechanisms and systems. The average loans per group today is about 3.3 lakhs per group. But then there are cases where people get as much as 20 lakhs per group today, which supports viable enterprises that women can undertake. It has very low default rate, which is a very great credit to this movement. And the government of India support, if you see, over the last about 10 years or so, it's about some 69,000 crores. Roughly around, say, 50,000 rupees per group today as it exists, which is not a very large sum. If you think back to the fact that it is over a period of 10 years this has been done, and quite a bit of it has been in the interest subvention part. So overall, what the numbers say is that it's a very large movement in terms of its significance in coverage of rural families. And if you want to make big changes, this can be an appropriate vehicle for policymakers and others to channel their programs, convince the people, and to adopt change. What are the best outcomes? In part, we have already seen the confidence and the capacity is built in the women. The banking system finally came to believe in the transformative role that these groups can play in the local society, in the lives of the people. The government thought it fit to become a voluntary organization of some kind. If you look at Kudumbashri in the early stages, they became the first state voluntary organization when they set up the CDS in their operational areas. Similarly, when SERP came in, and then these became models for all other states to follow. Whatever rural missions that were set up in the states, they tried to do what a voluntary organization will do. But we cannot expect state to act exactly like a voluntary organization, but they adopted several features of the same in ensuring that people can participate, that the community has a role even in government programs. The women became competent as resource persons. If you look at the success of the program, which I think Mr. Raju from Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Vijayanand from Kerala, also Mr. Vijay Kumar and Mr. Amarjit Sinha, they described in great detail. The power of the program was it did not involve external resource persons to influence the need for change, the need for being disciplined, and also learning the different ways of operating their livelihoods. This came from people within the system who were initially not barely literate, who were trained, skilled, and then made to train other people. People from Andhra and Kerala went over to several other places to ensure that they deliver the skills that are required by the new groups to perform well. The institutions of people that were set up, they are built for sustainability, they are being strengthened so that at a later date, without a program like NRLM, without NGOs, they can still sustain. There is a shift in emphasis today. It is not about opening a savings account or giving a loan, but it is about supporting livelihoods. We see second order, third order effects like large FPOs being set up in the space where the SHG women can participate as producing members and gain from its ability to market. The scaling up of this program on a mission mode, it actually came from the government. This was successful because it targeted results. It did not look at budget expenditure as the destination. It looked at how many groups can have viable access to livelihoods, how many groups can have access to credit, and how they can progress further. The inputs that came in, which accompanied multilateral funding, whether it is from the World Bank or programs of IFAD, these contributed big time in providing course corrections where required, in strengthening some of the institution building measures. One of the core things that has amazed many people, especially the people who are scholars, not practitioners, is the thought process that began 35 years back. The core set of ideas that you put women together, give them some skills, and then ensure that the group bonding and discipline will take care of the rest, that they will work in their best interest. This thought process has consistently been held. Whether it is the voluntary organization, government, bank, they did not disturb their belief in the strength of groups to work and go forward. Otherwise, there are temptations sometimes to break up groups and then work on individual agendas at the group level. But this did not happen in this program. So the consistency of ideas, regardless of which stakeholder came to get involved, this has helped this movement big time. And it ensured that women remain at the core and brought in other programs to come and converge on what the SDGs can do. So, what is the agenda that still continues? We have been successful for 35 years. When we celebrate what the movement has done, we are still looking at how do we improve group cohesion? How do we sustain the quality of groups as we expand even further? Do we need to ensure that the community institutions that are set up, they have an enabling legal framework? Today, some are associations, some are trusts, some are cooperatives. So how do we ensure these federations, which are also undertaking some businesses, become suitable in the legal, framework, whether as a cooperative or as a company, how to make that happen? Then strengthening the ownership in community institutions, because there are some places where the women make use of the federations as one more arm of somebody else's institution rather than realizing it is my own. So how to strengthen that ownership in those places and in the new institutions that will come up. And what Kerala started off, embedding this movement right in the local self-government, making it as a part of the local self-government institutions. How to make it happen in all other states. There are moves already on in a few states, so that the planning for the self-help groups, the federations, what they should do, it comes from the local self-government itself, whether it is the panchayats or others. The geographical skew that is there, how we are going to continue to address the way we are doing, how to accelerate this to ensure slow-moving states also accelerate their work. Then the entire issue relating to technology, which both Mr. Sharp and also Sanjeev talked about, whether it is the ONDCs or market access or digital finance or pure MIS that comes from these, how do we make this work for these groups? And then shift the focus even more towards enterprises and livelihoods. So when we look ahead, is there a large agenda? Yes, certainly. The federations that are set up, they have been functioning reasonably well, but their competence to deal on their own, manage themselves well, and introduce good governance practices within. This is something that we have to look forward to. The federations, they are gradually evolving into FPOs in a number of places. New FPOs are being set up. But rather than setting up new FPOs, can we make these ALFs work as FPOs? So that there is no loss of governance capacity, there is no transference between one to another. So how do we provide skills and capacities in CALFs to become FPOs and take up that role? Then regulation of federations, all said and done, number of members are using the financial services offered by self-help groups, whether it is savings or credit. The rest of the financial sector, customers have regulatory exercises which ensure customer protection, which ensure safety of savings. Not that these are compromised today, but then an even-handed regulation which protects these customers as well. We'll have to look at what might work well. There are, of course, some self-regulatory sector-owned control exercises done for a period. We have to see where it can go. The credit records of members. How do we build a credit record of individual SHG members who have been in the system? Some of them for 35 years. We were lucky to meet some of them. Some of them are 5 years, 10 years. When they actually graduate from a group mode to be owning an individual enterprise, looking at a larger loan, a credit record will help. So how do we make them? How do we make their record built up and then become eligible customers in their individual capacity of a banking system? Then poorest of the poor programs are running all across the program. And how do we accelerate it, especially in some states where it is going slow? And one of the key issues is at what stages this program will measure its impact and internalize. There have been 2 major evaluations that have been done of the project, but a continuing impact measurement based on panel data each year and trying to generate inputs from there in order that we continue to reinvest based on the learnings into the further stages of the program, this is necessary. And of course, an exit strategy. After 10 years, NRLM said that it would like to exit, but we don't see that the time is still appropriate. But we do need an exit strategy at every level, at the member level, at the group level, federation level. What is it that will empower people to be acting on their own in their best interest and in the interest of the community? So we do need some very clear exit strategy that focuses not just on sustainability. So at this stage, I should thank all those people who helped Girija and me in putting together the information and the book. There were several institutions that were involved. So the book talks about the initial 10-15 years in one section. We also talk about some of the number-based observations later. Then the entire structure commencing from the groups running up to federation. Then there is a lot of discussion about how NRLM became a game changer in the scaling up process of these and made this probably the largest single microfinance program in the world. We are also looking at the government organizations such as Mavim, SERP, Jivika, how they contributed to evolution of this program. At the same time, some of the significant voluntary sector players, whether it's Mairada, Dan Pradhan, and institutions like Hand in Hand, SKDRDP, Mavim, how they lent their own flavor to the evolution of the movement and how they have strengthened this. Many of these players are still working at it hard. And then we also have a chapter which looks at how the saving groups in other parts of the world, especially in Africa, work and what are its comparisons with what we are doing here, the key difference being. This is very credit focused. This is fully financially inclusive, and its goal is not financial inclusion, which is what the African saving groups are about. Here, this is about providing a livelihood option which will make their lives far better. To conclude, what we have to say is that we owe it to the millions of vulnerable women for making this into a roaring success. The women took the ideas which were half formed in the minds of practitioners who brought in the ideas and of course the skills, but they applied these with great diligence to improve their lives. So we have to honor these women, teachers who taught NGOs to keep faith, and the governments on how to design these development programs which involve women in their own livelihood improvement. So we salute these committed women who battle such a lot of odds to succeed, and they have showed the path to all others, including us. So thank you, women, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan, for authoring this book and highlighting its key points. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we have come to the end of the inaugural of this two-day summit. I take the opportunity to thank the esteemed speakers, the esteemed guests who have joined us on the days, and all of you here who are present.
I'm so sorry for this seems some mix-up in the notes, but before we close the inaugural session, may I now request Dr. A.K. Sood, Deputy Managing Director of NABARD, to kindly address the gathering, please.
Very good morning to all of you. Mr. Bipan Sharma ji, Chief Executive Officer, Access Development Services, other dignitaries of Access Development Services and dignitaries on the dais. Let me first of all congratulate the Access Development Services for organizing such events every year, which bring to the fore various issues which are grappling the microfinance ecosystem in the country and the strategies required to deal with such issues by various organizations. Let me also congratulate them for bringing two very, very important publications which document various interventions by various organizations and the way forward that we need to take. We are aware that India being a smallholder country where we have small and marginal farmers and other small entrepreneurs. So unless we go for collective route, it is not possible to, kind of grow the development ladder. It's a known fact. And SHG was one of them, these initiatives, which was started in 1992 by NABARD in association with Myrada through a pilot project, which was later on mainstreamed. See, NABARD being a developmental financial institution, the role of a DFI is to create ecosystem, to provide enabling services. But ultimately, the mainstreaming is left to the other partners. Unless the organizations like government, they come into the picture, I think things cannot be mainstreamed and upscaled. And it is in this context that the SHG movement, when taken up by the government through NRLM, it has really got into fame and got the desired visibility that it deserved. We have a number of issues in, say, for example, agriculture also, where we are struggling. For example, you are aware we are struggling with tenant farmers. The farmers almost who are cultivating 40% of the land orally, but we are not able to mainstream them through our various interventions, whether it is credit services or other services and schemes of the Government of India. So this is one of the challenge which we have been grappling with, and we are trying to find a solutions as to how do we include such people in the mainstream with various services, whether banking, other services, or other schemes by various partners. Even in the microfinance sector, I think there is a need for a shift from sectoral approach to ecosystem approach. There are various partners, there are various agencies, various schemes. So that need is to collaborate and leverage the efforts of each other. And that is the need of the hour. Microfinance also, there are people who are ultra poor. We have not been able to touch them. They don't have credit history. So on our part, we have decided to take up one project called GRIP, which is a graduated rural income generation program in 5 states, along with Bandhan Konagar. So through this program, what we are trying to see is that if we are able to provide them some financial assistance in the form of grant, and we are able to make some credit history for them. So probably their linkage with the banking system would be facilitated. And the innovative concept in this program will be the returnable grant and rating tool. So we expect that the grant that is provided to such ultra poor people, if they are able to return some part of it back to the implementing agency, then it will act as a rating tool for them, which can help them to their linkage with the mainstream banking system. You are aware that NABARD has, I have already told that during the 30 years of SHG bank linkage program, initially we started with formation of SHG, but when now the NRLM has taken the center stage, now the focus has shifted for livelihood creation and micro entrepreneurship development. We have entrepreneurs, but how do we take them to for creation of setting up of enterprises? That is now a challenge. We have had a number of lessons through this 30 years of SHG program, and we have come to know one thing, that SHGs are the most client-friendly units of the poor. That is one thing. And they are the potent vehicles through which the income of the poor, income of the women can increase. There are latest report that the labor force participation for women is on the rise, and labor force participation rate for men is marginally decreasing. So as far as women are concerned, their contribution in agriculture is very, very high, though it is not recognized. So to take them to the mainstream system is one of the challenge. How do we do that? And through this, through shifting our focus from women development to women-led development, will also be addressing the gender issues in development and also help in fulfilling the sustainable development goals. So I think, as I said, that there are many gaps in the microfinance ecosystem which we need to identify and address from time to time. One of the issue, the average loan outstanding for on per SHG basis, if we see, it is, though it is increasing, but it is stagnating within a range. Right now it is around 2.7 lakh per SHG. And if you calculate it on per member basis, it is not very high, maybe 20,000, 25,000. So with this amount, whether we expect the SHG member to, set up micro enterprises, that's a question to be asked. And what do we do in this? What is the gap in this ecosystem? Whether we need some kind of credit guarantee facilitation fund to, increase this average loan from this level to some higher level, maybe 5 to 10 lakh bracket. We are also thinking seriously on this, and probably we'll come up with some interventions. Along with NLM, we are trying to have collaboration with NLM on a nationwide basis. Then there are different players who are providing microfinance services, like MFIs, and there are smaller MFIs who have, their limitation in terms of accessing resources in the market. So maybe they need some kind of equity infusion or some kind of credit guarantee fund. So also there is a thinking on these lines whether some kind of services can be provided to this extent. We are also aware that 1/4 of the formal banking system is contributed by cooperatives and regional rural banks. And they are the institutions who are potent drivers of microfinance, but their contribution has not been to the extent that it should have been. So NABARD is taking efforts to revitalize these organizations by addressing their governance and technological requirements. We believe that cooperative system at the grassroots level in terms of PACs and other cooperative societies, they are very, very important players as far as microfinance ecosystem is concerned. So unless their requirements are addressed, it will be their contribution or realization of their contribution will not come true. So I think these are some of the issues which all of us should think over, and during the 2 days summit or whatever program, various such issues will be deliberated, and I hope that some thinking will result in resolution of these issues. I'm thankful for Access Development Services for inviting me here and sharing my thoughts. Thank you once again all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being here with us and encouraging us with your presence and those words. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I was sharing with you earlier, we have come with that to the end of the inaugural session. May I request the honored dignitaries on the dais to please join us back in the audience. Meanwhile, once again, a warm welcome to all of you who's present here. We are quickly moving on to our next session.